off again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Welcome to UFC Matters with me, Steve Wright. It is Friday night. It is 3 Amigos night, and I'm pleased to say once again I'm joined by Steve Hasty, Neil Mitchell, and Keith Patterson from NCSL. Good evening, lads.
Evening, Steve.
That wet on Tyneside, Mitch. I've been building an ark today.
I've been slumming it in 40 odd degrees at a water park this afternoon.
I knew you'd say.
I left it about 6 o'clock our time, and it was still 30 odd degrees. It's been baking the day. Like,
You've had 30 odd degrees of heat. We've had about 30 inches of water. So fantastic, mate, fantastic. But we'll try not to dampen everyone's mood watching. Try and give you as much information as we can about what we've heard this week about the proposed takeover of our fantastic football club. Who knows? We might even talk a little bit about football as well. Obviously, the news filtering through from Arsenal today was that Arteta clearly doesn't want Willock to come to Newcastle. And Steve Bruce making some mutterings at his press conference about, well, we'll see what we can do. But believe you me, if I was Joe Willock, I certainly wouldn't want to sign for Steve Bruce next season. But that's another story. I'm sure we'll get some of your issues and points across as well. As always, we'll probably be knee-deep in takeover and proposed takeover talk. And I guess one of the things I want to start with, Keith, is, after your BN letter last week, I have noticed, and I know the other lads have noticed because we've chatted about it in our WhatsApp group, is the certain journalists running the story that the EPL's case is very strong. Came as no surprise to us to see that, I don't think.
I think you're always going to get that. And if ever you get into any court action, I mean, I've been in a few, we've never took an action against somebody where they've come back to us and said, you've got a great case. That's part of the course. They never tell you that your case is strong and they're going to get a battering. So the first thing anybody does in a legal action, if you are pulled into court, is they rubbish your case. So what you should do is step back in time. Go back into last year when I took an action with Gordon against the APL. It's the same group of people that Ashley's took on. It's the same action, a competition action, and it's also the same solicitors, Bird and Bird. And you should go back and read notes from that, because I was legally not allowed to put the letter out, but I got a 14-page response when a lot of negative fans, who were knocking us, would say you'd get a two-line, two fingers up. And the 14-page response came back and said that we don't have a case. They then said we don't have any money. They then said we don't have enough loss. And then the last thing they did was they had about 7 competition points to answer, and they never answered any of them. So that itself tells you something, that even though they'd like to say people have got a poor case, they don't answer any of the illegalities that throw at them. But I think what's really important here is to remember the last point they put to us was, and we won't rush your case through. We won't expedite it. Yeah. And that's what's happened this time round. The club have gone to them with our case, plus some more meat on the bone. They've got experience of what the APL said to them in letters. So I'll come on to that later, because the letter they got is a very, very difficult thing to answer. And that will come into why extra time was asked for, which we'll come on to. But they were never, ever going to say it was a good case. And if you want to judge how much they don't think it's a problem, why are they trying to get it thrown out? Because if I've got a case against you, Steve, and I think I want to sue NUFC Matters, and I ask you the question, say you did X, Y, and Z on a certain date, and you never, surely you just answer that point. You just answer it, you dismiss it, and you'd save an action being taken against you. So if the case is so weak, why don't the EPL just say, well, come on, let's get this in court? It's like if a guy wants to fight with you in the street, and you can beat them, you say, come on, let's get it over, because you're going to chew on until I go outside with you. So let's get it on. Or if a boxer gets somebody wanting to take him on in a boxing match, he says, look, I can beat him, we'll miss this. So he doesn't delay. He doesn't swerve that boxer for 12 months. He says, let's get it. It's a payday. Let's do it. So the reason the journalists are publishing this is threefold. The journalists that's putting the negative things about Newcastle's case and the positive things about the EPL, one, ill-informed, They haven't seen the club's action. They haven't seen the club's letter. They don't know what the club's case is. They've never seen NCSL's action. But they bought off, the people that get work off the EPL. So if you look at the journalists, it's been, let's say, pro-EPL this week. They're all journalists that you three told me would come out the woodwork. You three all said, you'll get him coming out and him coming out and him coming out. And every one by one, it all happened. Because you've got experience. You three have got experience at knowing about the press for Newcastle. You know what comes out and who says what. The other thing that's common about it is the journalists that said that are all anti-Saudi. All the journalists that's been negative about Newcastle and positive about the EPL are all anti-Saudi. They're anti-takeover. There's none of them are for this takeover. And the third reason is, and this comes from somebody from the press who said to me, he said, the people who are putting them things out have a strong political bias. Now, I'm not into politics and I'm not into those kind of things, but they said all the people that's been pro-EPL have a strong political aversion away from the Saudis. So to be expected, I told them a week ago that this would happen, and you three told us, you three literally named which journalists would be knocking the case. Well, you're laughing though. It's uncanny because you've lived a year with this and you know what it's like. So to me, it's a lot of it's new, and you just said, oh, he'll come out. And when the first letter come out, you went, he's away, he started, and it was the person you nominated would be the first one to stick a letter. So nothing in that caused me any concern. And Liam said, why you? I was more confident than ever. I said, this is just what I expected to happen.
Yeah, Steve, it's the usual faces, isn't it? And
as Keith said, we've been involved with this for like 12 months now. We've kept our ear to the ground. We've watched, we've observed, we've gathered information. We've shared information when we've spotted it, and it's the usual suspects from the usual newspapers and the usual names within those newspapers. And let's face it, we've always thought there was an anti-Newcastle bias. We thought it was just that. There's certainly always been an anti-Newcastle bias in certain newspapers anyway, especially in the nationals. And you can tell that the way that those newspapers have rallied around the manager lately against the fans, knowing that the fans have got an argument against Bruce and rightly so after 2 wins in 22, etc. But all the way through that, they're the same. It's the same people, the same ones, in the same newspapers drumming up the same old stories. So was it a surprise? No. Surprise to Keith? It wasn't really a surprise, as you said, Keith, because we'd told you anyway that this is where it has come. But it's part of the course, Steve. We're getting used to it. We're dyed-in-the-wool Newcastle fans. We know who our friends are. We know who our enemies are, and we know where the criticism is going to come. And more than many occasions, we know what the criticism is going to be before it arrives.
Yeah, you're nodding away as well, Neil. It's something we're all agreed on.
It's all been reasonably predictable, but I mean, to tie in with how you started the show, Steve, the way Bird say to Keith, well, you don't have a strong case, you don't have this, you'd expect that. The same way I would expect Arteta not to turn around and say, oh, well, Willock's rubbish, you can have him for 15 million, that's fine. He's not going to say that. He's just not. And so you've got to understand how these people are going to talk and expect how they're going to talk. But then the minute we knew there was articles coming out, we called the first one, and then once we called the first one, the number 2 and number 3 were pretty damn obvious. And that's the thing we picked up, not just over the last year, but probably over the last 10 years. You can sense who's behind something and who isn't, and why. The geopolitical and human rights aspects of this takeover that have come in, which to a point is understandable. I know everybody goes on about how the feel that the boxing and the golf and other things, F1, don't get as much criticism as what we have in that takeover. I think that there is criticism out there. You do have to look harder for it, though. And is that just a reflection of where football sits as in the world as a sport, and how the Premier League sits as something seen worldwide as a global product? Or is it something deeper than that, or more sinister than that? You just don't know. There's a lot of wheels within wheels, but once you get down to the business end, which is where we're at now. This is what we've been building up to over the last year. The phrases and the language is pretty familiar and pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We've had quite a few questions, as you would imagine. I filtered through them all, Keith, from different people on my Twitter. Some of them were from last week, actually, and we just didn't have time to get through them. But I'll pick a couple out. One of them was from Dave in South Shields. He said, what are the prospects of the EPL getting a competition case thrown out, and why would they choose this route?
The reason you choose that route is because you're fearful of what it can do. If the competition action runs, it could catch them with the pants down, and it potentially they could lose their jobs, potentially they could be jailed, potentially they could lose 10% of the world gross turnover. But it's you've got to understand that arbitration is very different to competition, and competition affords you a much greater degree of disclosure. And disclosure will be the thing that wins this. Disclosure is the thing that the EPL cannot get through. And through today's programme, we'll talk to the fans about how the disclosure from that letter last week would be used in a court case. But if you were trying to get disclosure, first of all, I've already told the EPL that we've got the behind letter. And I did that on the show last week. And later in the show, we can go on to that letter and say why it's so damning. Now, under arbitration, the behind letter won't get mentioned. It won't feature, it won't get mentioned at all. So under competition, it won't get defended. That letter and the fact that I can now prove that it was actually sent out is enough to win a competition action. And you've got to remember, when we sent the competition action through, one of the top QCs in Britain said to me that you'll win the case, and I don't think they'll defend 4 points of the 7 you've given them. We're not too sure they defend any of the 7. But if it had been me writing back to me, I'd have said it to me, I'd have said, that's rubbish on that basis. That doesn't stand because of that. But they never did any of that. They never answered any of the points. So if they're trying to get a case thrown out, it's because they're fearful of it. And what people are doing is they're saying that the competition action is going to get thrown out. And the action they're going to take is they're going to try and lobby to say that they're going to try and go to the bench and say that this case is the same as the arbitration. Well, I'll explain that to you. An arbitration case that's run at the moment is purely going to work on one point, as we know. The judge has already told us. It's going to work on whether there's separation between the Saudi government and PIF. All this garbage about the prince, it's got nothing to do with that. So to do with one of the richest states, KSA, and one of the richest companies, £350 billion wealth company called PIF. And obviously they're separate, and the club can prove they're separate. And the Saudis tried to prove they're separate at the last round of talks going back to May, June last year, but they weren't allowed to do it. And what we do know is that the EPL never sought any legal advice from the state of Saudi Arabia. And the only people that can prove what is separate in a country, I mean, Mitch lives, stone's throw from there. And he'll tell you that in the countries he lives, in the Middle East region, that the only people who can say what's separate in Dubai is the Dubai government. They're the only people that can tell you how government works and how plans work. And
but look, Keith, the only difference to Man City's setup is one step, in that Man City are owned effectively by the Abu Dhabi investment fund, similar to PIF, whose chairman is the deputy ruler of the country. But they have a sports investment company, a bit like Qatar's QSI, sort of like in the middle. And that's effectively the only difference. For anybody to think anything else is ridiculous. And I still don't get how they can not lump Sheffield United's setup into it, simply because, do you think if that prince who owns Sheffield United got a phone call off the big man, that he would go against any wishes of it? Because I bloody don't, knowing how things work out here. You'd have to have some bloody big nuts and some hellish size wasta to take something like that on, and it's just not going to happen. So yeah, am I right in thinking though, Keith, what they're going after here is about getting it thrown out on process rather than the actual facts?
They're trying to do it on a technicality, and they're trying to also say that there's going to be similar points discussed and challenged in an arbitration that's going to be done in a competition action. But you've got to understand an arbitration is more tribunal-like, and what an arbitration is there to do is to decide whether the owner's director's test was fairly run. That's the whole idea. Did you apply that test right in 2020, or did you not? If you didn't, you're stuffed, and then it'll go through. And the judge has already told us that the one point they're going to discuss, which was never satisfied, is the separation. And there's a guy called Kirk on our Tottenham regularly. He's just come on one of the readers' panels, and he said, there's a huge legal point, is that separation is subjective, and he said, the test is objective, and he said the two things he thinks that the whole argument will get thrown out on that. I'm sure the QCs who represented us and representing the club now are all over that like a rash. But you've got to understand is how can you get a case thrown out which is going to challenge whether you ran an owner's director's test correctly versus a competition action that's going to challenge you for running an illegal practice called a cartel. Because if there's a cartel operating in Great Britain, and I guess that's why, for the evidence I've got, I'm more at risk when I sit and hold it myself, and that's why I've sent it away, and that's why I've sent 75 gigabyte to two teams of lawyers to safeguard me, because all the documents I've got and all the stuff we've found, if I sat on it and I was the only person to have it, best get rid of it. So we've spread that far and wide, and in those letters, Boris Johnson's come forward and said that there's a British cartel in operation here. And when there's a cartel in operation, he's compelled as Prime Minister to do something about it and stop it. You cannot let a cartel operate in British industry. It's hugely illegal. And there's three things on that cartel that they do, on abuse of a dominant position, on collective lobbying, and on the collusion, which we think there's points for every one of them to go back and hit them with. So why could they chuck out a competition action that's going to prove illegalities on multi-billion-pound companies? I mean, it would be, if that happened, people would march on Downing Street. If that happened, there'd be an outcry. So what I'd say to fans is calm down, because there is no similarities between the arbitration and the competition action. The competition action affords you much greater disclosure, and it affords you much greater insight to what the dirty have been doing. Arbitration is going to give you none of that, and that's why personally I'd rather the competition action ran first. I'd rather that the competition action, brought out all the examples of what they've been up to, because at that point, the disclosure, I think they're full, and I don't think they get through disclosure on the competition action. On arbitration, you don't have anywhere near the same degree, and that's why I've lobbied and pressed the club since October last year to run this action. And my view was always, we won't get the take-up without the competition action. So I've been, like a lone drummer, banging that drum for months and being laughed at. I mean, you guys know that I've been laughed at, that I didn't know what I was talking about. But it's amazing that Mike Ashley's put millions and millions of pounds into the exact action which I brought forward. And it'll only make us feel good if it runs, if it brings them down. But I don't see them getting through it. When somebody says, can it get thrown out? I really don't see it. And if they do see it, you've got to understand this group of buyers and sellers have unlimited money. And if you see how many million Mike Ashley's made during COVID, and you see that the Rubens have made X billions through COVID, by being astute and be commercially aware, they've grown their wealth, and they're not going to get talked down the river by the APL or anybody else. This is running, and they're coming after you, and it's going to happen, and they're going to expose you.
What's your thoughts, Steve?
I was gonna say. I mean, obviously, we saw it get the APL's request for a delay, which I suppose in one respect it surprised me, but in another respect it didn't. Because I've always thought that the EPL tactics, and especially Bird and Bird, and Neil will confirm this on conversations we had over a year ago regarding Bird and Bird, that they are very litigious and they love to kick the can down the road. They're one of those legal companies that, you know, very rarely do they end up in front of the judge because they've ground down the opposition before it actually gets there in terms of time and such like.
They do one or two things. They either grind people down by kicking the can down the road as far as possible, or then sit down and use that time to settle out the court so it never gets in front of a judge.
Yeah.
And you look at nearly everything that they've been involved with, that's what happens.
Yeah. So for me, the whole fact that they came out and said that they wanted more time, even just to prepare, wasn't a surprise. What did surprise me, Keith, though, was when the letter when you started to delve into that APL letter and the judgment that came out, granting them the extension, that we were given a time, given a date for arbitration, or at least what appeared to be a date for arbitration. But the little caveat in that was that the Premier League are also looking to kick that date further down into the long grass, and that leads me to that whole Tracy Crouch governance thing that the government's brought in, which is, again, that's not going to be till October before she even presents her findings that she's got. And I picked up some things on that, which again just leads me to believe that there's something going on here that is just going to get us absolutely nowhere. And it all revolves around a government and the British government, not necessarily the present government, but other governments all the way through, have this history of talking to football fans, telling us what's going to happen, tell us we're going to review this, tell us we're going to review that. You know, there was an all-parliamentary campaign that was written, which people can pick up. Just go onto the government website and you can see that. And that was 2003. And in that, they were talking about football governance. They were talking about what they were going to do about it. And various suggestions came out. And slap bang in the middle of all that, the Manchester United takeover happened. And when they came out, they actually said in their report, you know what, leverage takeovers are not very good. It had already happened. But it hadn't happened before the panel started. Kind of like they give them the advice, you know. And the whole thing for me, Keith, just appears as though it's long distance, and they're driving. And there must be a point where Ashley and his team are just going to say, we're not having any more of this, and they pile the pressure on in the opposite direction, and hopefully we have a judge who realizes that this is what's going on. How does that work, though?
I think it started now because the judge has already turned around. If you look at it closely, see, people get pedantic about dates, and I get people saying, "Is it going to be the 23rd of April, or is it the 6th of May, or is it the 5th?" Seriously, I mean, Liam will say to me, "Why are you so calm?" And I said, "Because I know it's coming." And I said, I was more panicky when the club hadn't ran the competition action, but I know what's in there, and I know what I've found, and I know what like I've dug. And the team that's worked with us have done the same. You know, we've just kept going in it. And there's 2 nights we never went to bed. You know, it was like the 2 things. So when you get 75 gig of evidence, you sort of think, well, I would like to defend that. But when the club got hold of it, it ranks up massive amounts of pressure, because the club have got all the detail and all the letters they've sent them and all the objections they've given and the poor answers. So when the club went back to the APL, and at times would offer more information, journalists have told me that they knew that the APL were closing the doors and stopping them giving more information. You know, I've had it from decent source that the club have been told, no, we've got everything we need. Now, if you get told you've got everything you need, that means you don't need any more. I've got enough. But you don't get told you haven't got enough and then not pass it. It's like saying, it's like somebody going into court. If you say, look, I am innocent, and there's the evidence, do you want any more? And they say, no, we've got enough. That means we've got enough to clear you. It doesn't mean we've got enough to hang you, because that's disingenuous. So for me, this is all just a game being played out. I fully expected the delay. The judge turned around, bear in mind, he didn't give them the full delay. If you have a look at it in detail, the judge actually didn't give them what they asked for. And he said that he didn't feel by giving the delay was going to change very much, but he gave them it more out of courtesy. Now, let's go and say why they need a delay. My knowledge is that the club have looked at my action since October last year, and they would have my action in its entirety. They know exactly what my points were. And you talk about Bird, they thought I had such a poor case, they've threatened to sue us 3 times. So what's all that about? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you bother with somebody who's not a threat? But, you know, they wrote to me on the 23rd of December, the last working day in the Premier League. They sent me a letter at tea time. I'll be the last thing that the APL did on the 23rd of December, sent me a letter, which was my Christmas present, and it was designed to give me a shit Christmas. I was already having a shit Christmas to start with. You know, I had the worst Christmas I've ever had in my life. So then I got that letter. That cheered us up a bit because it told us that I was bothering them. You know, it told me that, you know, this daft lad from Durham isn't as stupid as some people think, because I'm really, really rattling them. I'm sure in the EPL, and I'm sure Richard Masters, you know, I'll be amazed if they don't know who I am. And why does Gary Hoffman and Richard Masters write to me at me and Gordon at tea time on 23rd December? Because they just want to really, really upset our households. And, you know, I think it's worrying and it's sad. But at the same time, you've got to look at them. Bird are classed as the masters of procrastination. They always put things off. They never do today what can be done tomorrow. And they're renowned for dragging things on. But you need to calm down, because the judge ain't going to let them do that. If there's illegalities going in British industry, the judge is going to say, listen, I'm a competition judge. You can come with all your birds, your 2 birds, you can come with 4 birds and 5 birds, but we're going to run this case. It's going to happen on that date. And it doesn't matter whether it's the 6th of May or the 5th of June, it's irrelevant, because the next thing that's coming is case management conference. And at that case, they'll be putting deadlines in. And one of those deadlines is, when this case can be run, what's the best window for it? And when we get the best window, what's going to happen with disclosure? And disclosure is going to come in about midway through the trial. So if this is a 4-month trial, it'll come at the 2-month stage. If it's a 6-month trial, it'll come at the 3-month stage. And so if you said to me, you know, because they'll try every trick in the book to delay this, but I think it'll run in that kind of time scale. And I reckon in the next 8 weeks, we're going to see disclosure dates.
Yeah.
And you know, I can't be sure of that because it's they haven't had the case management conference yet, but it's coming. And when we come on to show what disclosure does, you know, every ordinary fan, which is what I am, will understand very quickly that you can't get past disclosure. Disclosure is going to catch the Premier League with underpants down in public on stage.
You know, that's interesting, because you're talking about, what I was getting at was the fact that I wrote down here, it was the 26th of June 2018. This is where the history comes. Tracy Crouch brought a review in about safe standing. And it was like, what happened to that one? And then you've got the Tory manifesto in 2019. And they said, in the manifesto, they said there was going to be a fan-led review of football. And what happened to that? It took them another 18 months. And it was only because of the fans and because of the ESL, the European Super League announcement, that it even woke them up to even considering that. So it's the history of successive governments, and then you read what Tracy Crouch is trying to do and what she's proposing to put in play or to look at, and you get Richard Masters coming out and going, well, you know what? You know, we don't think that there's a problem with football governance. We feel as though governance of football, you know, we've done a good job on it. They've done a good job on football governance. And he said, you know, yes, we'll work with them. We'll be very interested to hear what we've got to say. But bearing in mind that we heard, and what was it, Mitch, a year ago, that what if they did bring out a football governance review, one of the things they would demand that came out of it to suit the football authorities would be a reduction of the Premier League to 18 clubs. And we're told that was almost
that was fundamental to it. Fundamental to it.
Exactly. So you've got all of this, you know, and then you look at we've got a 2-track system. We've got Gary Gary Neville and Rio Ferdinand and people like that. Why are they doing it? They're doing it simply. They're involved simply because of they got a kick in the teeth, didn't they, off Man United fans because of what was going on with the ESL in another way. And now they're trying to ingratiate themselves with the Glazers or the anti-Glazer part of the support from the club that they used to play for. So now they're very much shouting their mouth off about football governance, and they're they've got another. I think I think the petition's hit 150,000. Well, 150,000 is just double the attendance of Old Trafford on a Sunday or a Saturday. It's not like 1 million or 2 million or 3 million football fans are screaming about it. It's a small beer in the bigger situation. But I just find the whole thing, and I get annoyed. I get annoyed at this kicking the can down the road. And we fall for it. Fans fall for it all the time. And I'm just fearful that that's what the Premier League are up to as well.
Can I just congratulate Steve Hasty on maintaining an air of professionalism on the Three Amigos show?
I didn't tell any about it. I told Stu, because I'd found this pair of budgie smugglers that were very like the Sexy Beast t-shirt. I thought, oh, sod it, I'm going to do that. And then the minute Keith said, caught with her underpants down, I thought, right, that's my moment.
So anybody who's wondering what on earth we're going on about, it's because Q-Tech made this t-shirt, hashtag Sexy Beast, which I'm pleased to say obviously is on sale for the on bids for the food bank at my Twitter at Steve Rafe. And we've got again George from America. Wow, £200 bid.
Unbelievable, man.
Which he's leaving in either way. George Hayes, thank you very much, mate. Honestly, you've been an absolute godsend for the food bank through a horrendous year for them as well. And that kind of gesture from you, mate, it's outstanding. Yeah, brilliant stuff, mate. So it's currently at £200. He did say in his inbox he would like to be outbid, but he's already paid the £200 in. He's not necessarily bothered about the T-shirt. He just donated £200 at the food bank.
I believe his words were he wanted the T-shirt burned along with the hard drive that had the picture on. I think
that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. But fantastic, good stuff. Well worth the wait for those people basically going on about what the big reveal is. I didn't even know it was going to be as bad as that. So apologies for those. Apologies for those who ended up spilling their tea or having a bad reaction to it. Some people saying, how can I unsee it? Which is hilarious. Those comments are well worth having a read back to if you haven't had a chance, Mitch. Absolutely brilliant. This whole thing with the APLs really got the fans wound up, Keith. Why do you think it was granted the delay? What was its purpose?
Right, I'll tell you why it was granted. Because if you think about it, from last year, we've been banging the drum with the competition action. We've built up a claim. We took the claim to a top QC, competition QC, who I think is the best in the country. And he built a claim that he said would win. He said, if you run this claim, it will win. We got that claim and the EPL put us behind the club's action, said that we won't run that before the club. So we were always kept waiting. And for every month it waits, you pay bills to keep your solicitor in tow, you keep bills for keeping this whole thing going. And so for fans, that's a big ask. And basically when you don't know what the date's ever going to be, it's that uncertainty. So if you think the arbitration hasn't gone yet, and you think that behind that now is club's action, and behind that would be our action, and you've got to think, would it ever run? So the club looked very closely at our action last year, and we told them that you won't get disclosure, and you wouldn't get the bullets you needed to get this takeover through. And what's happened is the club's had a legal team in place for 8 months, and they're a good legal team. And when you look today at the world's rich list, Mike Ashley's made mega money while all of his competitors have lost money. And so for him to put a few £1 million in this action, is his way of getting what he wants. He's absolutely determined to win this action. He's absolutely determined to sell the club to the PCP consortium. Now, the EPL get a letter 23rd of April or something, and they go, what's this? And it's a competition action. It's the one that NCSL fought, and they put us on hold and threatened us. So all of a sudden, Ashley comes in, and the first thing is that they said to us, you've got no money. Well, Mike Ashley's worth £2.7 billion. So that's gone. The next thing they say to us is, you've got no loss. Mike Ashley's lost 300 odd million just on the club. So that's gone out the window. The third thing they said is, we're not going to rush it through. You're behind the club. Well, he is the club. So there's Bird and Bird's letter to us, confetti. It's gone. It's finished. You know, that's why Mike Ashley has every right to throw a few £1 million at this. But what happens next, and this is the key thing, is you then come back to the point that they never even answered NCSL's legal points. So the club will have all them, plus the ones that they knew by dealing with them directly, plus disclosure. And you've got to remember, Robert O'Donoghue told me that we would win the action just without points. So if we would win, and then Mike Ashley's got all of his points as well, plus disclosure, which I'll come on to today, they're not going to come close to winning this. What have they done? And you've asked the question earlier, they tried to get chucked out. But why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try and get someone chucked out on a technicality? Because the only way they'll defeat the competition action is on technicality, or it's on actual procedural things. They'll never win it when it comes to, were you involved in the European Super League? Did you know that was coming about? Did any of those people make any comment to you about Newcastle United's takeover? Was anybody lobbied for the takeover to be stopped? And you can't answer them questions. And you know, later in this show, we should have 5 minutes on disclosure, because I think a lot of people get a shock at what it does and how it works. And if we go back to that letter I did last week about the behind, just that letter alone is a nightmare. It's an absolute physical nightmare to defend, and they will not defend that letter.
Let's talk about that now, Keith. Whilst you mentioned it, I mean, you know, go through that.
If you look at the letter last week, it was written by the CEO of Behind. Behind, in that letter, confirmed they're one of the biggest suppliers to the Premier League in the way of TV rights. So what it first says is, I'm the top man. I carry all the responsibility. Secondly, I've got skin in the game. So I am responsible for. Now, third thing is, they own a football club that would compete with Newcastle United on a European stage. And then there was a letter came out. So there's a letter which people probably didn't realise the danger of. When I saw it, and I listened to what Amanda Staveley said, what Amanda said was, it's other clubs in England who stopped this takeover going through. And you think, shit, if Behind have written a letter, and when you read it, it's the whole. I give that to some people that don't understand football and understand law, and I give it to people who understand football but not law, two different bodies. Both of them read it and came to the same conclusion. This has been sent by a broadcaster to football clubs. They all came to the same arrived point that this has come from somebody trying to talk to competitors in Newcastle United. So what we did was, we spoke to, I'm not going to go into details because obviously I'm tired, but we spoke to some people who were outside of the Big Six. We spoke to some people that could have got that letter. So let's say in the other 14 clubs. And when we spoke to them, they assured us, and we knew from the contacts we had that they would tell us the truth. And they hadn't had that letter. Okay. Now, on the one hand, that's a bit of a negative, because we wanted them to say, yeah, I've got the letter, here it is. Because once I know the letter's gone out, it then becomes gold dust. So what we did was, what Robert said was, you've got the letter, Keith, and the letter's very damning. And if the letter's been sent out to some football clubs, tell them to lobby Newcastle. Because you saw the writing last week, it said, we strongly advise you. And when somebody strongly advises you, and bear in mind, they were strongly advising people who were dependent on Behind's money, because that's where the TV money comes from. So them clubs need that TV money to trade, and they were strongly advising them to lobby against the takeover of Newcastle United. And you think, right, wow. So what I need to do then is find proof that that letter's actually gone out to somebody, okay? And when disclosure comes, I want you to think about this tonight, and fans to think, please, please don't message me with them long tweets saying, Keith, what about these words for disclosure? Because seriously, like, QCs are going to do that, and I'm not going to put words in every word that you think of. But I want you tonight just to think of, if you were doing disclosure, if you were going to try and search the WhatsApps and the texts and search the letters and the emails folders of Man United, Tottenham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City, plus behind, plus the EPL, right? So you're going to go through Richard Masters' computer and you're going to get everything he's doing, every text he's ever sent, right? Even if it's to his missus to tell him to get the tea on, you're getting a lot. You're going to get his mobile phone and you're going to see everything. You're going to see the colour of his underpants the last time he farted. You'll get everything in this guy. You're looking up.
I'm not moving. I'm not moving.
They get his budgie smugglers. So what happened is the only thing happens then is that disclosure comes out and it goes to their legal team. And the only thing they like to pull out is information that is called, it's information, I don't want to use the wrong long words, but it's information where they've been taught to their solicitors. So if they've gone to their solicitor and says, can you give us advice on this, please? Because we've got a bit of a problem with the takeover at Newcastle. It's classed as privileged information. That's the legal term for it. And privileged information means that you can't have it because I'm asking my solicitor for some advice, okay? But we're entitled to everything else. Everything else you're entitled to. So then both sides agree some words. So I say to the EPL, right, I'm NCSL, I want to know these 10 words, and then they give me 10 words back. They search my documents, they search my phones, and then what I do is I search theirs. So the kind of words I'll be looking at, right, are words like takeover. So you know yourself, if you go into your emails at home with your people watching the show, and you type in takeover, or if you type in NUFC matters, you'll get your emails. I'll tell you every email you've got where the words NUFC matters are included. So the words I would look for typically is takeover, consortium, Ashley, Saudi. If you put Saudi in, you'll get Saudis plus Saudi Arabia because Saudi's part of the word Saudis. So you'll get that. And then what you'll get is you'll look for stuff you might be short of words. You might put Stavely in, or you might put lobby in, or you might put wealth funding. But what I'm trying to get here is bear in mind you've got this behind letter. You already know that exists. So I've got the letter and I'm reading it, and I can pull any obscure word off there, and I can put that in the pot.
Keith, on the back of that letter, round about the same time, I had it on good authority from somebody inside the media that they were also lobbying the other broadcast partners of the EPL. Have you come across evidence of that during your? Because I've never asked you this.
Yeah, right, you're right, and it's great to talk like this because what you'd ask me off the record, like if I can answer, I will, and we recognise that I've signed an NDA and I would get to it. But it's good that you ask us that here because I can share it with fans and allows fans to sort of people that watch to get an insight to it. So I went looking for a Premier League club that had that letter, right? Now, this is the bit that I wanted to get over tonight. I want you tonight. I want Steve Hasey to imagine you're Man United. I want Mitch to imagine you're Tottenham, and Steve Wraith to imagine you're Liverpool, okay? And I want you to imagine that I'm asking you now for every letter where you've got the word Newcastle in it. And I want to see everything. And you've got to send everything you've ever written with the terms Newcastle in. So every time Man City played Newcastle, I'll get a load of fixtures and things, and I'll get things like I'll get a load of junk in there. And what you do is you give it to paralegal, and they go through it, sift through it, and they go, got one, and you're pulling out all the stuff. As soon as I get the behind letter going out, and it's lobbying people to do something which was illegal. It's called collective lobbying. It's where a group of beings in a marketplace lobby somebody to to do something against another player. So that could be 5 people selling paint in Newcastle. 2 of them sell more Leyland and Dulex paint than anyone. They say, stop supplying him, I won't buy off you. It's nearly jailable. You can't. It's illegal. You can't do it. You can't stop people trading in a market like that. It's open competition. You've got to advertise better. You've got to sell better. You've got to cut your costs better. But this is where it gets feisty. So you 3 get that letter off me, because what I know now is that the letter was sent out, and what I do know now is it certainly went to the cartel group. It went to those 6 clubs. So you lot's got the letter. You 3's got the letter, and it arrived probably at the same date, because it would have been sent electronically, because that's the world we live in. What did you do next? And that's how disclosure works, because what did you do, Mr. Hasty, at Manchester United, when that letter landed on your desk, and the clock ticks now? What did you do? Because I'll tell you something, son, if you didn't go to your solicitor and say, holy shit, this is illegal, what should I do? And your solicitor didn't write the behind and say, hey, whoa, you can't do this. This is collective lobbying. You can't do that to us. This is Newcastle United Football Club. They're trying to get investment. And better than that, Mr. Hasty, show us the letter. Show me the letter that you sent electronically, your solicitor, and show us where your solicitor wrote to behind and distance yourself. And if any of you 3 in your football clubs didn't distance yourself, you beat. You honestly, you acted illegally.
Keith, we know that me as Tottenham then went running to Piff and said, do you want to invest in us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've turned that over as well, which brought loads of threats and grief and all the rest of it. But there's one journalist criticised a journalist for running it, and he said, you're in bother with Tottenham. Oh, so why is he in bother? He says, well, basically because you've put a story out from Keith Patterson, NCSL, saying that Tottenham sat at the table with PIF. You 3 know exactly how I found out about Tottenham sit with PIF. You knew, we all knew, and that will remain with us as to how we knew. But we knew what they sat down and said. We knew which company sat with them. We knew which investment company. And we printed all that. We printed that in the press. That went on the Tottenham supporters website. You could read about, I think the only word that's missed out was gobshite, but it said Keith Patterson of NCSL has turned around and said, that you've accused. Isn't it amazing that the journalist phones another journalist and says, you're in trouble? And he says, oh, am I? He says, yeah. He says they're gonna be on you. And when that happens, when you put some press out, our lawyers said, if it runs 24 hours and you don't hear anything, it means it's fact. And within 24 hours, we had a call. They'd gone to some of the press who run the story, and they told them that the Tottenham were after him. And he said, oh, who is it coming after us? And this is the best bit. He said, the press officer. Well, if you put something out illegal about Tottenham, you don't get the press officer coming after you. You get their
top end solicitor.
You get the highest bloke in the group coming and say, we're going to sue the balls off you. So to say it's the press officer, that's like getting the bloke. You can't say, no, we don't like you saying that. Can you change that? And that's what happened. So we knew it was true. But go back to disclosure. When Steve Ray's team has got hold of it, they say, well, we after 3 days, what we did, we spoke to Behind on the phone, and we said that, well, I'm not too sure we can get involved in this. Sorry, Mr. Ray, that's not good enough. You got a letter in electronic correspondence, and the least this court would expect you to do is to write back electronically and disassociate yourself from it, distance yourself from it. And what I've been told, and this is where my investigations went last year at the start of this year, is that none of those top 6 clubs distanced themselves from the Behind letter. Now, you might think that's enough, and what Robert said to me is you really need to get some kind of proof. So I didn't stop there. I went on, and I got hold of something, and I have it in my possession, and I forwarded it to all the people fighting the APL. They've all got a copy of this, and we've now got a letter that's been sent from Behind's company again on Behind letterhead. It's legal source that's written it, and he asked that question, which I've mentioned before on the show, of what's the difference between you lobbying to get your takeover done and us lobbying clubs to object to the takeover? And Robert, I won't use the word Robert said, but he just burst out laughing, and he said, well, if you tell them that what you're doing is perfectly legal and what they're doing is perfectly illegal. And if that case runs, if all Mike Ashley does is get them into a courtroom and hits them with a behind letter and says, what did you do? And the information we've got, they did nothing. And just by doing nothing, having that letter sent, and then that solicitor saying, well, there's nothing wrong in doing that. It's game, set, match, mate. And I'll be saying, get your cans in. That's what I'll be saying.
Good stuff.
The other thing related to this about the letter from Bean, and if some people haven't cottoned on why me and Steve banged on for months and months about geopolitics and the problems in the world, you've got to remember Bein Sports is part of the Al Jazeera network, which is owned by the Qatari government stroke investment fund. And it was all done in a time when Saudi and Qatar were loggerheads. We don't need to go over old ground. We know the whole argument about BOQ, and that's gone to the WTO. And that has led to things happening at the moment as well, with IP laws being written into Saudi law. But that's how complicated and complex this all is. And you've got sovereign wealth funds using different vehicles to turn on each other.
But it's
and
not,
we're just a little boat in the middle of the rough seas getting tossed here, there, and everybody way, and it's really frustrating.
It's not that complicated when you think of like if I was a judge and I said, look, I've only got a morning to run this case, and it's not how it works. But if I said, look, do us a favour, let's get that behind letter in. Who got it? Who got that letter? The biggest thing that I haven't covered is the EPL got a copy of that letter as well. So the EPL got that letter. They knew.
So they knew.
And they knew it was kicking around, and they knew behind were lobbying, and there was a lot of patronising about how good the EPL were in that letter. So they knew about it. They were probably taking bows and curtsies, thinking it was a good letter for them. But it'll hang them, that letter alone. And there's other things. There's other points. Robert talked of 4-7 were very strong. And he said to us, he says, Keith, I know you thorough, and you put your heart and soul into this. You always have done on legal cases. He says, but never take sight. He says two things about a court action. You only have to win 1 point. So you have to win 70. I think the club will run a shitload. The other thing is, well, you talk about Masters and Hoffman. If you take a court action against Masters, he's been asked many, many times, did anybody influence you in this case? And he said no. He said in writing. So we have a letter where Richard Masters says nobody influences. We put a letter up last week which said that they take the Khashoggi thing into account, and there was sympathy in there. Now that's been influenced. So you would put him on the stand and say, Mr. Marcy, you said no influence. You talk us through this letter. You're now saying you have sympathy. You now say you'll consider that. But you're here saying you didn't. So which is it, Mr. Marcy? Do you want to be considerate, or are you non-considerate? Because there's a contradiction here. He squirms and jumps around a bit. You heard Hairy Hands turn around the other day and say how close he was to Hoffman, and how we have to sort this little problem out at this Newcastle United. That's illegal. That's illegal to sort out the problem for someone who's trying to compete with you. Somebody who's trying to compete with for managers, trying to get the managers out the same pot. They're trying to buy the same shirt sponsors, all come out the same pot. You compete for the best shirt sponsors. Emirates are only going to put their name on so many shirts. And you compete for the players, to buy players, and you compete for money by winning trophies. So and you get more money the more you compete, the further you go up the table in terms of TV, right?
Keith, just very quickly, mate of mine's put a couple of questions up tonight about US antitrust legislation, and do you think that could be used in some way in this case, or do you not know enough about that yourself?
Say that again? He's put something about...
He was asking about US antitrust legislation and using that route in the legal case.
It's opening another can of worms. If he to be honest, if he does that, and I know the club, if the club saw mileage in that, they would put a specialist in to do it. Because like for example, the club have got to do a separation specialist, and
yes,
that person in an arbitration will be questioned by Shahid Fatima, who is MENA, Middle East, North Africa specialist, and she would bring a champion witness in, which is like a key witness. It's in legal terms they always refer them as an expert witness, and they'd have one, the EPL one, and they'd question them and feed them. If you talk US antitrust, it's valid because three of the cartel clubs are US owned, and for that reason his point's very, very valid. But to me, if you can beat a team without bringing subs on, without varying from what you do, I think they've got enough competition points now on the table without going into that. If they do that, and let's suppose they lost arbitration. Let's suppose Nash was going to run this because he will win this case. There's too much there. He will win it, and he might go for that. Then they might go down the antitrust route. But I think it's bringing in a whole series of. I think it's different barristers who would specialise in that, and different key witnesses. So I think by doing it and going down that route, you bring more costs and more time to the case.
Do you think the EPL have even considered what happens in Saudi law separation?
No, I know they haven't. I know for a fact that the EPL haven't, and have been criticised in other circles by other people. There's other people within Newcastle got problems with the EPL, the way they act and what they've done.
Right.
And they put forward that they've approached various people to act against the BQ operation. And they say their story is that 8 legal firms have turned them down. Well, I'll give a story about them. Why have you not put anybody in act for your own separation? Because there's animosity between some of the things the EPL are trying to do, but they would easily get representation in the Middle East to sort Saudi separation out. Because there's actually companies in the Middle East and in Saudi would like to show the EPL why PIF and the state are separate. Because countries from around the world, I mean, they trade at 350 billion. And they've done that by being able to prove separation. And so they're going to have umpteen witnesses to do this. My only doubt, and I don't mind saying it, is that somebody said, what you're more confident in, competition or arbitration. My doubts are that on arbitration, already we've tried to have a pop at it's the bench, and it's the closed shop of football in England. I don't trust it. And if you said to me, what's the difference between the EPL, the EFL, and the FA? I'd say nothing. They're all one. They're all paying the same pot for me. And so I just speak my mind. I'm a kid from Durham who sports Newcastle, and I don't care about anybody else really. I don't care about any teams or anything. I'm just Newcastle, and that's it. And I just have no trust in British football. If this case was lost, or if we didn't get it, I would stop watching football because it stinks. And the reason I fight and the reason I've given up half my life for 9 months is because it's the game I was brought up on, and it's the club I was brought up on, and I don't want to sit there and say I could have done something. I don't want to be a martyr or a coward or like I don't want to after the. Can you remember when we nearly got bought over by Man City, and it was all down to Den Suarez and Jimenez and all that, and we thought it would never happen again. Well, this is actually bigger and grander, and this is 18 times bigger than Man City. We have a guy buying 10% who's got 21.5 billion, and Man City have 28. So the Rubens are nearly as wealthy as Man City. This is a once in a lifetime. If this happens, it changes Newcastle city centre, it changes the development, it changes our kids, grandkids, all the people's got an old relative alive. It's the only chance you're going to probably go and stand with your dad and watch a match where we win something.
This is the thing that resonates with me, Keith, is it's not just the investment in the football club, it's the regional investment potential as well. We had that to a much lesser extent, it must be said, when Steve and I were with one of the Canadian bids. They had eyes on a lot more than just the football club.
Yeah. And
understood that that connection between city, community and club that we have, then that's not to belittle any connection any other club has with their community or city. But that trisomy is quite synergistic, and it's quite I think that's the uniqueness. When you talk about that unique relationship that Newcastle United has with the fan base, it's exactly that. And that's what frustrates me the most out of this, is that you look down the line 20 years. This city's grown up as I've grown up. Newcastle's grown up as I've grown up.
I mean, for me,
the places I would go as a teenager to get up to no good, you can now go and have a meal in a Michelin-starred restaurant and buy an apartment for over £500,000. You know, and that the city as a whole has grown up as I've grown up. It's become inclusive and welcoming in a way that never before. And certainly when I was a teenager standing on the terraces, some of the things that we witnessed just don't happen now. We police ourselves and we sort our fan base out. That big flag that Bill has with dignity on, that's what it's all about, you know. And we have the potential to move on over the next 20 years exponentially from this, with this investment, not just for the club, but for the community too. And that's what frustrates me with this takeover big time, is that, look, you're not just holding my football club back, you're holding our region back.
Yeah, let's just give a shout out to the sponsors, and as you've probably seen on the comments coming up, lads, over 1,100 watching tonight. Big thank you to everybody, as always. Never take your support for granted. Thank you very much. Spider VPN.
And sorry if I spoiled your tea.
Big shout out to the lads. It's Spider VPN for all your internet.
I blinked and missed it.
You did. Big shout out to Spider VPN for all your internet security. Just Google Spider VPN and that comes up as your top Google search, and they can help you prevent your credit card details and all your other passwords and things being nicked on the internet. Well worth a visit. Give them a shout. Skipsandbins.com, another main sponsor this month. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Just look for Sir Bobby and that will lead you to their website. And also a big shout out to John, who is in the chat. qtechshop.co.uk. The makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and we'll come on to what he's going to be doing very shortly with regards to the food bank. He's come up with a great idea, which I think Steve might be able to give us some news on. And Jab Signature, John from Jab, bringing his new range out very soon. First time visitor to the channel, then please hit the Newcastle Legends logo down in the bottom right hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumbs up to like the channel and like the video, which does us a big favour. Again, that's free. Click the share button, share it to your social media. If you've got any Newcastle United groups that you're a member of, share it to them. And try and get some like-minded people to join the channel, and drop into the comments box. Always a lively chat, always a friendly bunch. Well worth a visit. If you miss any of the shows or just want to catch up when you're out on your daily walk, get yourself onto your podcast providers like Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, whatever it is. Just search NUFC Matters and you will find the chat there. The NUFC fansfoodbank.co.uk is always in operation. If you want to drop in a donation between now and Sunday, you will enter yourself into a prize draw for that little beauty, the watch. Whatever you donate gets you into the prize draw. Please donate as much as you can. But obviously the watch will be drawn. I think it's at the end of the season, so probably Sunday. I'll double check that with John. Also, John from QTech has knocked up these wonderful 3 Amigos shirts and hoodies, and the hoodies are very good quality. I've got me cult one on, but it's nice fit, great material. Big thank you for sending us that, John. And it's got that logo on the back if you want a 3 Amigos one. So I know this is the most watched show that we have on the channel. If you want to wear a t-shirt or a hoodie, then get yourself onto nufcmatters.com, where you will find lots of different t-shirts, lots of cups, lots of memorabilia. Get yourself onto there. There's even some football shirts. If you fancy one of them, get yourself onto there, nufcmatters.com. Have a look around and see what you want. Don't forget to get your bid in for the t-shirt for the food bank. Sexy Beast, we had a demo earlier on. If you missed it, you'll have to watch it again from Neil. You've got about 45 minutes until the bidding on that stops, currently at £200. And also, sent this by Eddie on Twitter. He says that's a Tony Maudsley unsigned photograph. I think it's in response to Mitch doing his little parade. I think it's that guy off Benidorm. I think that's it. I think that's what that is. So cheers, Eddie, for sending us that. Now, those of you who watch every Friday will know that we do a competition which QTech organise. They are giving away a bundle of T-shirts and other NUFC Matters goodies. You should have had a couple of clues already. And this is your clue for this week. And there we go. 1962 to 1975, 389 appearances. That's 1962 to 1975. 389 appearances. So jot that down with the other clues that we gave you, and we'll have another clue next week, and that will be then leading to the big question, which should be interesting. Hi, Steve seems to know. Now, Steve,
what it is, Steve? There's a pal of mine, John, and he on the first week he texted us what he thought the answer was.
Yeah,
and it's a bit of a joke with us because it's John's favourite player of Newcastle. As in inverted commas, not.
Yeah.
He was convinced it was that. And I tried to explain to him that just because he thinks he might have guessed who it is, that's not the answer to the question. The question's coming. The question's coming along. He's got to get So the poor lad's been getting a bit of stick from the rest of the lads about it, you know. And but like that one, that I wasn't too sure, but that one confirmed to me. I think I know who he's talking about. So that's class, absolutely brilliant.
It is. Thank you for everyone who sends their photos in. We've had a couple sent in. Lots of people wearing the NCSL T-shirt. I saw a few at the match during the week as well. Dave Harrison, thank you for sending this one in. With the Drop of the Week T-shirt in, Doll. Dave, thank you very much for that. And I know you popped up to see Steve Hasty. I missed you the other night. I think you saw Steve and Keith and Bill and that at the food bank. This one was sent in incommunicado on Twitter as well. Somebody live from their dashboard in their car. Blythe service station cult hoodie. So nice to see these things getting a bit of an airing. Some people just like to send us old photographs, and I thought this one was an absolute belter. We ended up commenting on this photograph, and I always used to say, "Where the hell did they wash their hands?" when you used to get those Keegan hot dogs and stuff outside the ground. I take it the
answer is they didn't.
They didn't, exactly.
They washed their hands in the water that they put the onions in. That's where they washed their hands.
Lovely. And that's why I never used to have onions. I don't think anybody be having any onions after watching Mitch earlier. I tell you what I love about that photo is there's no sign of Shark Bar and that bloody hotel. All you can see is Newcastle Breweries. What a great sight that is. I miss that place, and anybody who was lucky enough to get a tour like I was back in the day.
It's not that long ago you might have been thanking the owners of that bloody hotel for taking the club off Mike Ashley's hands.
Very true, very true. We'll be covering that, of course, in the summer. We are going to be broadcasting during the summer, and me, Steve, Mitch, I'm sure Keith will be able to drop in as well. We'll be doing stuff about former takeover attempts and about fans groups and why people have tried and failed with different fans groups at St James's Park. That's going to be quite an enlightening one, and that's going to be starting at the end of the season. Next week's going to be full of season reviews from all the different people who contribute to the channel. We'll be getting a lot of ex-players on over the summer, but we'll also be looking back at things like the fans liaison group and the fans liaison officer, which of course was me, the first incumbent, Lee Marshall now doing that. And we'll also be looking at things like Newcastle United Supporters Club and then how it became the trust. We'll be looking at the Save Our Seats campaign. We'll be looking at the coffin march. We'll be looking at all kinds from different eras. So I'm looking forward to doing that with me good friends Mitch, Steve, and of course Keith. And I'm sure we'll have some different guests on as well. I know we've got a couple lined up. So plenty to look forward to in the summer. Something a bit different. Some of your favourite shows will be going the journey just temporarily, but we will be sticking with Liam Kennedy, who will be giving you transfer updates, and the three Amigos will be remaining on Friday. So don't panic. Those of you who enjoy those two shows, they'll still be there. And Super Mac and Gibbo will be giving a different insight. I think they'll be looking back on games gone by. Also, we will be doing a lot of England stuff with Gibbo and Super Mac looking ahead to the Euros and commentating on the Euros. Gibbo and Malcolm, though, are committed to the full summer as well. So some of your regular programmes are there, but there'll be a few other things that'll get moved around. And I do have to have a little bit of time off as well, but I'll make sure there's plenty of content on the channel. Anyway, we've got an hour, well, less than an hour to go, and we've still got a lot to crowd in. So I suppose we better do one of our regulars, and this one is going to take about 10 minutes. And it's going to take 10 minutes because people keep sending them in.
Bombarded is the word, isn't it? It's just bombarded with lookalikes. It's brilliant.
Well, this is Mitch's regular thing, but obviously we all get sent them. And of course, my WhatsApp gets full of these photographs, and I'm getting photographs in there. So apologies for some people who sent these in, and I don't know who they've come from, but other people who sent them, I've managed to just get your Twitter, just done a screenshot on the Twitter. Now, this one was sent very early last week, and this was 90s football. Laurent Blanc and Fabien Barthez. Basically, people saying they look like Barthez. So that's probably the least likely contender for lookalike of the week. But I thought
considering you played him in a bloody film once.
Well, I did, yeah, exactly. So that was the least likely one to win. Then I got sent this one by John Mendham. He says, NUFC lookalike, Keith Patterson. He says, I sat next to him at St James's Park, so we know who it's from, John Mendham. And he says, this is what Keith used to look like with hair. Mick Hucknall.
He used to tell us to look like Barry Grant.
Absolute classic.
Yeah, the old side,
calm down. This one was doing the rounds early doors last week as well. Now, I found this interesting. Michael Quinn had said that I never knew Mitch was in Afri Zayn Pet. Now, I was thinking, surely he doesn't mean Michael Elphick. And then when I zoomed in, it's the guy actually sitting behind. It's not Michael Elphick. And that looks like you, Mitch, sitting behind Oz and Michael Elphick, and he's actually smoking a cigar or something.
I can set people off on a hunt. I have been an extra in 2 films.
Oh,
when I was at university. No, I'm not. No. I'm not gone there. But yeah,
that film, I hope.
Confessions of a Window Cleaner and them pants. Robbie Banks says, look-alike Steve Wraith, Harry Kane and Liam Kennedy.
Okay, good one.
I bet he wishes on the same money.
I bet he does, aye.
I bet he does, aye.
He also sent this one, Chris Waddle. Now, who's the guy on the right? I've got no idea. He didn't say who it was, but anyway, it's a good look-alike, just purely because... No. Chris Waddle and somebody else. He looks familiar, but I can't place who that kid is. Anyway, good one. It did look alike. This one says from Michael Laverton says, or the former England and Durham cricketer who moonlighted as a Leicester fan for the day, which I thought was quite good. Yeah, I mean there is a good resemblance, which is what it's all about. I'll
send him that. He used to live next door to me.
He did, aye.
This one's an anonymous one, of course. Gabriel Obertan and some cartoon.
Squidward.
Squidward, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Wilde.
Wow.
This created a lot of arguments because people were claiming original copyright on this idea. But Helmet from Afri Zayn Pet and Chelsea boss Thomas Tuchel, which I thought was absolutely superb. Then we had a spate of Keith Patterson ones. From Robbie. Midge Ewer.
I wish I had his money.
Midge Ewer, yeah. Who's that?
I haven't got a clue the bloke the right is, but
just anybody bald in its game, isn't it? That's what that one is. Now, this was better. This one was Jack Grealish and some singer or DJ or something. I've got no idea who that guy is. This one was in 3rd place.
Ben Jacobs.
Ben Jacobs, yeah, and the guy from The Office. This one is in 2nd place. I love that. I thought that could.
That's fantastic.
That's brilliant.
Well done, Sean Campbell. 2nd place. You get no for 2nd place other than a bloody well done, mate, because I thought that was absolutely superb. Definitely. And the winner is, drum roll.
Spenny Mag.
Spenny Mag and Big Daddy.
Oh, it's quality that.
Scumbag, I'm telling you now, that was Mitch's idea, not mine. And that was doing the rounds. And I've got to be honest, Fanny, I'm sure Penman had a part to play. Penman had a part to play in that, to take it up with them, mate. But that, for this week, is Two Look-alike. Fantastic. I do enjoy those. Keep them coming in. Send those tweets to me, Steve Hasty, to Keith, or to Mitch. We'll get them. And getting on the bald theme as well, Keith. I got sent this. Team that turns its fans bald. Magpies are number one for slapheads.
Unbelievable. That's what, wasn't it? Were we actually top of the league for that?
Top of the league for something, that's what it is. So, I mean, I'm not sure
if it was top of the balance sheet league and top of the Baldy league. Fantastic.
I'm not sure whether
come
that's
a long way.
Whether that's the sport or the sun, but anyway, that is apparently why we're bold, Keith, because we're supporting Newcastle United. And I did stumble on this, which I'm sure will get an air in the game once we start talking about fans, groups, and protests. But somebody sent us this, and it's the original photograph from the back of the Daily Mirror. And if you look to the far right-hand side of the photograph, that kid with his arms outstretched singing Sack the Board is actually me. And that guy burning his scarf is Paul, my pal, in 1989, who, it's actually 31 years ago since that photograph was taken. That is us campaigning against McKeag and co, Sack the Board. God, nothing's changed, lads. And I got grounded for 2 weeks when that was on the back of the Daily Mirror. And I saw the photograph was taken by Ian Boost. And that was one of his first photograph jobs. I know Ian really well. He still works on the beat for the Chronicle. So I've asked him if he can get a better photograph of that and see if he can get a copy of it, because it's a bit of history, that. But it just
I'd have a copy of it, because if it's a bigger photo, I'm sure I'm just off that photo. Because I'm sure one of the lads in the top left at the back is one of my mates.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing!
Convinced of it.
Amazing.
I'd also need to check it with Mick and say, right, is that you? Because it bloody looks like him.
Nothing has changed at all. I think that's basically what that shows. We're all still campaigning against things in Newcastle. Somebody sent us this as well. This was for you, Keith, and I can't remember the name of the guy, but it's a zebra under his arm. Right. So he just said, "Can you show Keith this? It's an inflatable zebra."
I hope it's solid inflatable, because it really kills the shagging zebras. I hope it's not that.
Dear me, well, it's got absolutely nothing to do with from QTech. I'm sure QTech will come up with some kind of alternative. But thanks for sending that in, mate. Apologies for not getting your name. As I say, sometimes it just we get caught out with all the stuff that comes into the inboxes. But thanks everybody. Your stuff does help. Make the show. Lots, as I say, to get through in the next 45 minutes or so. And believe it or not, the lookalikes are already coming in for next week. It's hilarious. I've got a couple of other questions, Keith, from different people. And Bill from Felon said he saw you outside the ground. You were collecting for the food bank this week, Keith. What was it like? And I mean, you were. When I saw you were standing on the opposite side of the road. What was behind that? He's asking.
I got some threats on Monday. I got told if I went to Newcastle, I would get attacked. So when I went, so what I did was I went on. I spoke to Steve Hasty. I got invited to do the food bank, and I just thought it was a good time to go. I mean, I don't run, I don't hide, and I'm just a fan. I'm just a bloke from Durham who, like I don't know how I got here. I don't know how it ended up being me. And the lads that started doing this campaign, if you like, moved aside and some stepped down, and I ended up being at the front. And you could liken it to going on the town moor, I guess.
Keith, that's how I became chairman of NUST.
Right.
I think I was picking my nose while everybody said take a step forward, and everybody else took a step back.
Yeah. Well, if you imagine a town moor when people sit there and there's somebody in the ring, he's knocked half a dozen out, and someone says anybody else, and people say, Keith, you have a go, and they all step back, and there's nobody else getting in, and that's what happened with this. I mean, I didn't want my name on it at all. I wrote that letter, it went on Facebook, it went berserk. They put it on Twitter. It had 100,000 views or something on Twitter, and they just said, you've got to step forward. And for me to step forward, I've had a hell of a life. I love what I've done, and I was in the middle of writing a book. You know, things that's happened to me. I've been arrested in 2 countries in the same day with my solicitor. I've had a fight. I had a fight with a bloke who was going to bring a plane down. He said he was going to crash the plane, and I was in first class, so I flogged him in first class. Probably the only bloke who's had a full-blown fight, but I panicked because I'm a bit of a nervy passenger. But I've been knocked to the ground by the Sultan Brunei's legal team because I bumped into them with a BlackBerry, doing some emails, and they thought I was trying to attack them. So I got pulled to the ground, had 6 guns pulled to my head. I just laid on the floor. So I've had some balmy things, but I've done the clubs as a kid. I used to be a hypnotist, qualified hypnotist, and run my own practice. I've flown around the world with multi-billionaires. So I've had a hell of a life, and I was putting a book together, and the only thing I haven't got's an ending. And somebody talked to me, said this could be a perfect ending to your book if you could get the takeover sorted. But it sounded like a good idea at the start, but somebody will do it. It's been crazy. And when somebody says to you, you know, if you go to Newcastle, you'll watch your back and all that, I just think, who are you talking to? You know what I mean? Like I'd rather get attacked and get knocked down and say that's just for trying to get a takeover. But make sure you can knock us down, because I've never run in my life, and I never would. And I'm just an ordinary bloke from Durham, you know, I'm getting on. But I've had a hell of a life, and I wouldn't like to go to my grave and say, do you know what it is? That behind letter could have won that case. And it was a bit of Amanda Staveley saying it's time the fans stand up. It's a bit unknown about competition action. You know, I run an action that consumed 50 million in legal fees. So it's much bigger than this, the action I ran. And it took 3 years of my life. So people said you're probably unique in the sense that you could afford to run the case, that you've got that knowledge and you've got that crazy passion for Newcastle. So, you know, some of my family, some of the people that I love the most have looked at us and think I'm crackers, you know what I mean? And it's been a difficult journey, but when somebody tells me that I can't go to Newcastle, they've told us I can't go to Durham, so I'm down there Saturday as well. And like, I'm not walking away from anybody. I never have. And if my crime is I want this takeover to go through, and I'm going to do it. So what I did was I went on Twitter. I said I'll be in Newcastle. I told everybody that I'll be in Newcastle. I went to go on my own. And when I got to the food bank, all I wanted to do was collect money for them, because I know it's a really great cause. And when I got there was Steve Hasty, and the first person I've ever cuddled under, you know, after lockdown was Colin Whittle. I saw him on you know, outside, and I love the bloke, and I just had a big hug with him, and you know, he did just big hug, and like I go back so far with him, you know what I mean? And he's been really poor last year, and he just says, I'm on the mend again, mate. And I says, I can say that, and I just go so far back with that fella. I just absolutely love him. And he's the first bloke, I just said, you know, under COVID, who the hell do you want to cuddle? And I give him a big hug and a couple in the street. And then people like Dave Harrison come up, who I'd never seen. There was so many people come over who were regulars, Raymondo, can I have a photograph? And I was just moved, you know what I mean? I didn't know what the fuss was about. But the one thing I wanted to do was not bring any attraction. If somebody wanted to have a pop with me, have a dig at us. And if I've upset somebody, I wanted to make sure I didn't upset the normal collections of the food bank. So I crossed the street. I just got a bucket and went across to the side of the street. So all you lot, Steve Hasty, you wouldn't know why I went. But I just said, get us a bucket. And I said, am I allowed? Do the police allow you to go? Yeah, you can go and collect there as long as you don't go into the 9 bar. And I goes, right, I'll just stand on the street. So I stood on my own for over an hour. And people were coming down and they knew I was there. And I never had one negative comment. You know, there was nothing at all. It was just like huge praise, you know, like I just don't get it. I don't get why. I don't get why there's 30 odd people out there that are politically driven. You know, we've got profiles on them all. When this is over, I've got deep pockets, and you've come after me. I'll come after you when all this is over. And if I can close you down, or, you know, give you the grief you've tried to give me and my family, then do it. Somebody's been on this show tonight and said, are you selling your house, Keith, because the grief you've took? And, you know, I didn't expect people to need to know I was selling the house, but it becomes public, and, you know, when people start sending you details around and abusing you, you know, there's people lost their little voice piece this week because the people they work with are sick of them criticising people that's collecting for food banks. But, you know, like, if you can find criticism, but somebody will stand in the street and collect money for people who aren't eating, then you seriously need a doctor. So what I did is I came to Newcastle this week. I told everyone I was coming. I told everybody that I was going to the Irish Centre at the end. I sat in the Irish Centre, I support everybody in there. We cracked jokes, we had fun. I went to the toilet on my own. I didn't take the kind. I've got a lot of people look after us if I was in trouble or I was under threat. But I went on my own because I know I can handle all the threats of any keyboard warriors. And I just faced you up, and I'll face you up again and again. And at the same time, I wanted to meet Bill Cochran, and I wanted to collect money, and I got a shitload. You know, I got like hundreds of pounds in, and there was £20 going in that box on match. And I just got a different insight to what people like Steve Hasty do on a match day when I'm stood in Idles Bar or whatever, you know, or in Beyond, you know, getting beer down my neck, out there standing in the street, Colin Whittle, Bill Cochran, and you collect for people, less fortunate for them, and I just thought it was amazing. So that's why I did it, but partially why I did it was because I wanted people to know that I don't run.
Yeah, well, it's awful to hear that. Absolutely disgraceful. And, you know, it comes as no surprise that no one turned up, Keith, because that's what these people do. They'll threaten you online, or they'll send you emails from the dark web. And ultimately, these kind of people, that's what they're all about, unfortunately. I had a one today on YouTube where they simply put Steve Wraith OBE, one behind the ear, very soon. Nice, you know, nothing to do with Newcastle United, that of course, but it was quickly deleted by that person. And these kind of people, you know, do that kind of thing to try and unnerve you and put you off. Sadly, I had to put up with that for years, and I accepted it. I mean, one of the very first experiences I had on Twitter, I've mentioned it many times, is that, you know, I got an inbox to say my wife should be raped because of my opinion on Newcastle United. That is the kind of people that you're dealing with. And I think you're right. These people, some of these people are actually mentally ill. You know, they are mentally ill and they need to see a doctor. And, you know, that's something which they need to seek themselves. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I've grown a skin to it. I worked the doors for 18 years. I was used to getting, you know, abuse to my face by drunken people or people off their heads on drugs. So maybe I'm just made of something different. But I can see the emotion, Keith, and hear the emotion in your voice. Just don't let the bastards grind you down is the best advice I can give you.
Never will. And I hope the day they come to put one behind you, I'm stood with you, because they'll see a bloke, you know, if they're the same size height as me, they'll see, you know, I'll be running around the floor with them. But I've never run away from anything in my life. And, you know, you've got to understand that when somebody tells me I can't do something, I've given up bigger things than abuse to do this case. You know, I was in a great relationship for 4 years. And you know, I put us both at risk because I had a death threat on the 17th of November. By the 18th, you know, I was arguing with my partner, and we broke by the 3rd of December. And I realised that I couldn't get out of this, and I realised that I'd given my word to so many people. And you know, when you do that commitment and you're prepared to see it through, my God, if all you're going to do is pop at me because of your politics, you're going to motivate the life out of me. You've made the biggest fighter and the biggest commitment. I've chucked more money at this than I ever dreamt of chucking at it because you people, because you said I wouldn't and I couldn't. And you know, Steve Wraith's come back and fought back and got 40,000 people following him. You've completely failed. You've actually made NUFC Matters the biggest and best podcast there is because you've done it. You called me a cult. And I you know, go back that first show, and I says, I think you're one, but I'm not a good speller. And I'll say it again here and I hope that I meet you one day. I hope I meet you face to face, because I'll tell you what you probably are, and I won't get that spelling wrong. Because all you've done is you've looked at our back number plates, you've watched our rear number plate, and you've watched what we've done, who we've tried. But when I'm scurrying around trying to get proof that behind let go is being done, what have you been doing? What have you ever done for this takeover? And I'll sit and meet you. I'll meet you in public or wherever you want. But you motivate the life out of me. I'm more driven to get this done now than I've ever been. And I'm more confident now that Mike actually took my case on, that we will win this case. The only thing, you know, I do worry that some bent judge chucks something out. But when this competition runs, we win. And when we win, I'll laugh at the last. You know, he who laughs last laughs the loudest, and I will end up laughing at the end of this.
100%, 100%. Half an hour to go. Big thank you to everybody watching. Still over 1,000 watching, which is fantastic. And big thanks to John and the lads who come up with that this week, the A-team. I think that in itself sums up how we feel, when we do the shows and when we get the crack off everybody in the chat. It's been absolutely fantastic, the support over the last 12 months. And as Keith says, forget about the trolls. It's you guys out there who watch the show who give us the inspiration because, we have far more, and I mean far more compliments and praise and support than we do about trolls.
Oh, we do, massive.
I've got to say, as somebody distanced from it, literally, listening to Steve and Keith's feedback from doing the food bank through the week gave me a big boost, personally, to hear that stories and the tales from that night, one night with only 10,000 in that ground. It was a boost for us out here. We managed to get a group of UAE-based mags and a couple of Qatar-based mags together. It was great to get everybody back together out here, and then see everybody back together in the ground, and then hear your tales from the evening, both of you. Gave me a ridiculous boost, which I cannot put into words, really. It was
amazing. It was amazing. People coming up here and what they were saying. It was amazing how grateful they were. They were saying that, because I'm the last guy here, and they were saying, I heard two people say to Steve Hasty, what you have done through lockdown is amazing, and you've lessened it all, and they were singing your praises, Steve. And you see, yours have been done for a year, and you've done it night after night, and I've done it for a few weeks, and it is a commitment, and it does take up the back end of your week. And they were just saying that what your lads have done at NUFC Matters has helped people through lockdown. And one bloke said he says it's the one show in the week in our house that will always be on, and you don't talk when it's on. It's quite worrying.
Yeah, I've got to say, Steve, that NUFC fans food bank wouldn't exist without the fans. It needs the backing of Newcastle fans, and that's what it's had. We just happen to come up with the idea. We just happen to be the ones who stand there. But the success of NUFC fans food bank and everything we do then to pass on to the West End food bank comes from the 52,000 who go at the match, the people who support us week in, week out, the people who bring donations to the ground, the people who put money in a pot, the people who give us gifts to auction, the people who sponsor the show, who go out of their way to help, to look after the community. Bill, you mentioned the flag, dignity flag, but it's actually dignity and community, and that's that. Yeah. As a community, we're giving back a little bit of dignity to the people who need a little bit of dignity because they've struggled over the last 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. We all have seen the film Daniel Blake. That's where the inspiration came from. We're also inspired by the lads at Liverpool who started it up, who are great friends of ours now. We've got to know them. We keep in touch with them. We communicate. And we've created, alongside those, we've created a little environment of a collective football organisation of food banks linked to football all around the country, whether it's Manchester City, Manchester United, Leeds United, Huddersfield, West Ham, and I could go on and on and on, listing the clubs and the fans who are doing exactly the same as us. We don't need a medal for it. What we've got is we want football fans in the country, and we want governments to understand the influence that football fans can have on that community. And if they're going to talk about what governance of football is about, then they should be listening and talking to people who are actually at the grassroots, who are doing things within that community and supporting that community and supporting their football club.
Yeah, good stuff. Half an hour to go, guys. Sorry, I can't really get through the questions tonight because we've had that much to talk about, and obviously that much as well to get through, and still got a few of the regular sections to come. So I think we'll go with Steve Hasties. Yeah, tweet of the week. Glad to see there's not as many of these as there is. The lookalikes, but there is still quite a few to get through, so we'll do our best. And I'll pick up a few. Steve Hasty's picked up a few. I thought this one was great last week, of course, the FA Cup final, Steve.
Yeah, and it was, wasn't it? I mean, dear me, what a cup final. What an ending to a cup final. And I think, any normal football fan, if that was their club and they got that VAR decision, we would all love VAR. And that's why Gary Lineker loves VAR, because he supported that club from being a kid as well, just like we support our club. So I think that sums up when it works, when it comes good for you, you're going to love it.
Yeah, this one was yesterday. Frank Chipperfield. Only three more games in League One, and we're done with the league forever. Frank did put that out a little bit too early after that playoff result.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah. Then there was this one.
Yes, the Sunderland transfer targets. They're all linked up there. They're all lined up. Looking good. Yep. All right. That could be anyone from Pennywell, I suppose. Then we've got it. I like this one. This is differently, Dave. The BBC put a thing out that's saying that famous Crystal Palace dinosaur given an emergency facelift, and then differently, Dave said that's a bit harsh on Roy Hodgson. He's only 73. Hey, what a career he's had. 73. Now this one. Now, I think. We'll put it up. We don't want to be disparaging, but I think, Amanda looks good there, how it started. I'm wondering whether she does feel like that about how things have been going over the last 18 months. But again, the humour of Battle Hill Subway, I love it. Lad from Wallsend, Mitch. So we had to put it up there.
Any 28 forever, man.
Exactly. And then this one, Joe Willock. Apparently he's the first player since Jamie Vardy to score 6 in consecutive matches. And the last player to do so was Papi Cisse. So, hey, some record. Let's just hope it. Let's hope he's wearing black and white next season.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now this one, I think there we are. We've got the old "Would I lie to you?" And the question being, I once took Newcastle from 17th to 17th and won Manager of the Month for April. So, was he lying? Is it true? Great programme. Great little bit and a little bit of humour, Steve.
Good stuff. I think that's our tweet of the week this week.
I think so.
Thanks, Steve, for doing that. Good stuff, as always. Keep those kind of tweets coming to us. Again, we'll get sent quite a lot of them. There is a match day live. Final game of the season against Fulham will be covered by myself and the NUFC Matters team. People asking what is coming up over the weekend. Well, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, I'm back with Mick Lowes. So join me and Mick at 1 o'clock for the look ahead to the game and get your questions into Mick. That is at 1 o'clock. Also, a little special on Sunday. He did promise he would come back on before the end of the season. Ben's coming back to have a chat about the takeover and answer your questions, given his views on the ever fluid Newcastle United takeover.
Did he have to cut with him, Steve?
He could do. We might have it with him. He's. I asked him to come on Saturday, but he's covering the Scottish game tomorrow. So, so unfortunately, he can't. But
you and I are on a show tomorrow night as well, Steve, aren't we? At 5 o'clock.
That's right. Yes.
We're on our lead show. So I think
you'll find me and Mr. Penman maybe joining you at some stage.
Oh well, hey, so.
That'll be good. And just, I did mention it earlier. QTech are doing a special thing during the summer months. Steve, do you want to give that a plug now?
Yeah. I think it's Friday. Is it Friday the 6th or Friday the 7th of August? We're gonna from 12 o'clock on the Friday through till 12 o'clock on the Saturday. We're gonna do a 24-hour pool marathon. So basically, all that's going to happen is the pool club on Stowell Street is going to be open for 24 hours, and we're hoping Newcastle fans can come along and have a couple of frames of pool. That's what we're doing, and it's going to be all in aid of the West End Food Bank. John's got some great ideas. John, and anyone who knows QTech knows that they're into, that is their business, pool and snooker. And we're gonna have some challenge games. We're gonna invite people in. Hopefully, get a few people, a few ex-players might come along. You never know. Some of the NUFC Matters crowd. I'm hoping Keith can come along. I'm hoping to see you there, Steve. And what we'll do is we'll be able to shoot a few games of pool. have a bit of a laugh. There'll be food on, there'll be drink on, and you'll just be able to pop your quid in into the bucket, play a game. There'll be games of killer. There'll be all sorts of things going on. But this will last all night. It'll carry on from, like I say, 12 o'clock on Friday, all the way through till 12 o'clock on Saturday. First big weekend in August before the season starts. All in aid the food bank. Looking forward to it. It should be a really, really good time. So anyone who's in a pool club, anyone who wants to come along, you're more than welcome to join us. The place can hold up to 400 people, probably more, and it's just going to be rolling through. So if you're coming into town for a drink, because the bars are now open and hopefully will still be open, then you can pop in and shoot a few games of pool in the afternoon or the evening, and just generally have a bit of chit chat about football, play pool, and enjoy yourselves and go home happy knowing that you've raised some money for the West End Food Bank. So that's what we're planning. We'll announce some of the sort of detail about it as the shows go on over the next few weeks, Steve, just to give people a little bit of an insight, let them know who's going to be there. I'm sure there's a lot of lads like you and I who now picked a pool cue up for ages, who would love to have a few games of pool with their mates. Or even just be somewhere where you can all be together and have a laugh and a bit of joke on and enjoy company of others.
Yeah, 100% should be good. More information, Gary, will be available over the next week or so. As soon as I get the flyer and stuff from John from QTech, I will stick it up on the show. But big shout out to QTech. Great idea. Another wonderful gesture, as Joe Walker says. Okay, more to get through. It's that time, Julie. Short but sweet. Big thanks to Mo Al Jazza. This was after last week. I did happen to comment on the FA Cup final. I was just being polite and congratulating Leicester. Shut your effing mouth. That ref is paid for not booking the only handball goal, you effing mug. Be careful next time what you tweet. Bold. Yeah, you get the rest. But yeah, big thanks to him. Great stuff. He's troll of the week. Yeah,
Steve, are you bald? I've not picked that one up.
He is troll of the week. Okay, 15 minutes to go, and it is time to look ahead to the match at the weekend. Of course, we play Fulham, last game of the season. Nothing riding on it, which is great. And as always, we fall into Toon Stato's hands for a little bit of info on the game ahead.
Hello amigos, cheers from Athens, Greece. So, the final game of the season, away to Fulham. Our record in the final away game of the season is not spectacular. Only 2 wins for the past 28 years. 2 wins, 10 draws and 13 defeats. The good thing is that the 2 wins came both in London. In 2013 away to Queen's Park Rangers with Alan Pardew in charge. And in 2019 the famous last win and last game for Rafa Benitez against the current opposition. Against Fulham in the Premier League, our record at Craven Cottage or at Loftus Road is a funny one. We have 4 wins and 9 defeats, not a single draw since Fulham came to the Premier League back in 2001. In terms of players, of course, Joe Willock is the hot property in town. He is chasing the record of Alan Shearer from 1996, his first season in Newcastle, in scoring in 7 consecutive appearances for the Toon. He has only 1 game left to achieve it, and we all hope that he will have also next season even to beat it. In terms of appearances, Jonjo Shelvey is the player to have started the most games in the Premier League so far, and this is likely to continue on Sunday. Behind him are Miguel Almiron and Karl Darlow, and who knows, with the injury that Dubravka had during the week, maybe Darlow has another chance to come back into the team, unless of course he's also out and Gillespie can step in. Let's finish the season in style.
Great stuff from the Globetrotter there, Andre. Big thank you to you, mate. And I think I might get Andre involved in the Euros and looking ahead to certainly the England fixtures and see.
Wouldn't he make a great Bond villain?
He would, yeah.
I want to see him stroking a cat in front of a map of the world with strategically placed submarines on it.
Although stroking a cat and the stuff that you're wearing has a completely different analogy on a night like this.
He needs a brighter jacket, because if he's going to be moving from Bulgaria to Athens, I'm hoping he did it on a train like Michael Portillo does when on his great European train journeys. You know, I hope it's been a nice, relaxing journey like Michael Portillo does.
Thanks to everybody, Dodo Bird included, who said it was Billy Ray Cyrus with Chris Waddle. Thank you for that. Right. I wouldn't have known that. I know his song "Achy Breaky Heart" or whatever it is, and I'm just pleased as well we didn't get on the backdoor references when Mitch did his thing with his kegs earlier on. That would have been Keith would have been having me life again. Keith, Newcastle Fulham, last game of the season, absolutely nothing on it apart from pride for Fulham. How do you see it going?
I think we'll win, and I think we'll score. I'm an optimist. 2-1 Newcastle. Willock will get one of the goals. The other thing I was dragged into the other day was ASM. He was some of the things he did with the ball the other night. Because a few people said about they'd say whether they'd be here next year, and the story I got told the other night that was thrown around was that we'll go for Willock, and people were charting him up at 40 million, and then they'll say yes, but ASM's got to go the other way, and then people were saying that ASM's the perfect Arsenal player. Seriously, I'll tell you what happened to that lad. If he leaves Newcastle and goes to another team, I bet he falters, and I bet he's found his club in Newcastle, and I'll bet you that when you watch him play, and there's a time when he got the ball, he danced over the ball, he was taking the pay, and I'm not saying this setup at the moment's right for him. And Steve Wraith will quickly say, would you, if you were Willock, sign for Steve Bruce? Of course I wouldn't. And if I was ESM, I'd be trying to get out. I would be trying to get to a bigger club that's going to use us in the right thing. But the best thing that could happen is obviously the takeover, and then we can get Willock regardless. He'd be well in reach. But ASM's got to stay, and the things he's doing with the football, that pass he put through the other night was just world class. It was, I tell you what it is. Look at it 3 or 4 times, and when he put the ball through, he put it through, and the bloke would never have got there. He would never have got that ball. It was Murphy got the ball. He would never would have run into that space. He would never run as far or as fast. But what happened is the ball made him. He got Murphy to go beyond himself to knock that ball over. But what he did is he put him so far ahead that any of us could have scored the header, but it was still a cracking header. He put it in well, but it was just made easy. It was that header was made easy by ASM, and don't underestimate he's leagues better. They talk about Lauren Robert and people like that. Seriously, people think I'm deluded, and I've got to admit as a Man City fan, I said seriously that ASM has the ability to be something special. And he did things the other night with that football. And when he danced around, seriously, he puts his foot, he drags the ball back. And like the last time I saw that in Newcastle, and I saw Tony Green play and thought he was just a genius. I enjoyed Jimmy Smith and things he did, and over the years, the Gazza, the Beardsley, and Waddles and all them. But it's Ginola again. Ginola did things with the football that I didn't see anybody do, and Ginola just excited the life out of me. I just thought he was just a different league. He's just a different brain, and that kid's got it. And to me, he might have some character flaws. He might have done some things. He might have gone away, on his birthday and all those. But that's the multi-million-pound footballers that we live amongst. And what it needs is a stronger character and somebody you'd like to look up to more than Steve Bruce. It needs a Rafa Benitez style icon, or it needs a Kevin Keegan kind of. I'm not, for a minute suggesting Keegan as manager, but if Keegan had been his manager, he'd have made him even better. Keegan would have filled him up and told him, he'd have said, "You are capable of getting European Football of the Year." He'd had him believe in it. And I'm not saying he would achieve that, but he would have got as far as he could because the management is so much better, and you need a big manager to manage big players. And for me, I'll be watching that game, and I'll just be watching every time ASM gets the ball or what he's going to do, and I'll just be looking at every time Willett gets near scoring that goal because it's just a special achievement. So I think it'll be a bit ropey, the game. I think Fulham, deflated. But I think that Newcastle will win it. I think they'll win it 2-1 and looking forward to it.
Yeah, Rag and Bone man, yes, we do love a Maverick at Newcastle. I know was saying before, one or two saying that, if Rafa came back, he's, ASM isn't his kind of player, but it would be interesting. It certainly would be interesting. I think, I mentioned on the show with Malcolm and Gibbo last night, I'm just more disappointed how many times he goes down and rolls around and signals to come off, but that's his only fault, ASM, really, for me. He's the kind of player we need to build a team around. It's not the kind of player we want to sell. Mitch, your thoughts on the match on Sunday?
Keith's nailed it about ASM. That trip back home when he was injured was just somebody who wasn't thinking it through. He watched Wilson go back down to Bournemouth, and he thought, "Well, I can do that as well." And then the cack-handed way he tried to get back in the country without the right paperwork the club didn't know is just typical young footballer with too much money and not enough of a clue, and agents and friends and family whispering in his ear. For me, there's only two places he would ever go. One's PSG, the other one's Monaco. Monaco feels like he's unrequited love. He's a lad from the south of France. He was at Monaco. He was cycled through the system and let go. He still has a big connection to the club. Again, how he tried to get back in the country when he did his flip over his birthday also involves Monaco at the end of the day. This feels like his club in the way it seemed like it was Ben Arthur's club, it was Ginola's club, it was Lauren Robert's club, and I think he gets that, and that's why he's so invested in the community. The stuff he's done for community stuff here shouldn't be taken lightly. I don't think he's done it as a PR exercise. I think he's done it because he actually gives a monkeys, And in terms of the match against Fulham, it's a dead rubber. You never really know what you're going to get out of them. The irony, if Josh Maja comes off the bench and scores a winning goal for Fulham and it doesn't send the Mags down, like we were being told it was going to happen week in, week out by a certain group of individuals from the village of the damned, that would be ironic. But I actually see we're winning it because I think Fulham now have the stuff and come out of them. That there's a rift between the owner and the manager, and some of that rift revolves around the players who've come in on loan. Are we going to see those on-loan players play? Probably not, because they were going to want to go back to their parent clubs without an injury, thank you very much. And if they do play, they're not going to want to get injured, so they're going to give 100%. We've got an opportunity here to finish with a decent points total. That's literally come out of nowhere, and I'm sure we'll have that rammed down our throats by certain parts of the media, and probably by our manager as well, who we have to remember has done nothing but belittle us as a fan base, and really not treat us well as a fan base during his tenure. And he'll take all the credit he bloody well can when the bottom line is you've just got to hear the voices and who's speaking when some of these goals have been scored in the empty grounds. So, fine, well, it's the players that have kept it. The playing group have turned around and said, well, sod this, we're going to do this for our fans who absolutely want us here and want us to play for them. So, for me, I'll take a 3-1 win, and I hope Mr. Penman's bet comes in tomorrow or Sunday. Right.
Steve, your views?
Maverick players. You've rattled off all the names there, Mitch. You rattled off Ben Arthur, you rattled off Ginola, you rattled off every player as a Maverick. And you mentioned we've had Jimmy Smith mentioned, we had Tony Green. Tony Green maybe he's not so Maverick, but all the others were Maverick players. The players that we loved as fans at Newcastle. And that's what excites us. That's what gives us that extra spurt, and that's why I support Newcastle United. What I would say is that every single so-called maverick player who's left regrets it.
Yes.
They regret what they had at Newcastle at the time. They don't regret it when they leave, but 6 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, they regret it. Somebody put up there that he's Asprilla. He is. He's Tino. He does his own thing. He has his own way. He's not as focused in Tino's little world. He's not living in a little bubble that Tino had, because Tino had a little bubble that nobody would ever be able to break and could never burst. But he is that type of footballer. And that's what we love about him. We love to see people being taken on. We love to see a bloke who can go past 3, 4, 5 players, and if he gets brought down, so what? It doesn't really matter. He get a free kick or whatever. What he hasn't got, I suppose, is a finish at times. There's certain aspects of his game where you think just go for it. But as Keith said, that pass that he put through to create the goal, that made the goal. It wasn't the little chip that came from Murphy, and it wasn't the header, but it was the pass. Whether it was the vision or whether it was just the fact that he didn't know what he was doing, I'm not too sure. But that's what made the goal, and that's the excitement about. That's why I go to St James's Park. I go to see St James's Park to see players like that. I go to see players like Willock who put an effort in. So I want that combination. I want the players who put the effort, and I want the players who entertain.
And who love it as well. His post-match comments have been fantastic.
Yes.
He loves it. He loves it in the Northeast.
Yeah.
He loves it in Newcastle.
Yeah. And when we talk about Newcastle United, we talk about the takeover, we talk about what we can be as a football club. We all know as fans what the football club can be. Because we've lived that football club. We know what it means to be a Newcastle fan. We know what excites us. We'll not get anyone back. If we finish second in the league, we wouldn't be the ones who are going, we should have finished first, because we've been there before. We're not West Ham, who are going. I listened to a guy on the radio this morning going hammering tops at West Ham because they're finishing. It looks like they're going to finish outside the top 6 or not get into the top 4. And he's trying to say that he expected them to be in European football this season under Moyes. And I'm thinking, what made you think that? You got beat off us in the first game of the season. You were one of the worst teams in the league, for goodness sake. This is football. This is what it's all about. Newcastle United, as a united force, are they're unbeatable in my mind because of just what I get from supporting Newcastle United. ASM, he probably won't play on. We'll boost him up, we'll big him up, and we'll find out he's actually injured and he won't play. That's the sort of thing that happens to us, isn't it? When we get to this point of the season. But Fulham, let's talk about Fulham. They're dead, they're buried, they've gone, and as you say, the players that they've got that are scrambling around. The irony for me would be that Josh Maja does play, he does score, we get beat, but the Macklins have already gone down. And the Macklins they haven't made it rather to the playoffs, and the Macklins are sitting there going, "Oh God, you know what? We would have got the playoffs if he had stayed." That's what I love.
Absolutely.
That's the and so I hope he does play and I hope he does score. And the Macklins have got beat the day before in their running, and they don't even make where they're going to be. Somebody said dead rubber. Yeah, it is a dead rubber. I don't even know. I don't even know where we're heading. I don't know whether we're heading for a 3-1 win and following Stewie, or whether we're just gonna lie down. The last time we went down there, we got beat. We won 4-0, and we played great football. And what worries me is we scored 1 goal against Sheffield United. We didn't play that well. There were aspects of that game on Wednesday night, and Keith will agree. We were sitting in the bar watching it and thinking, we're getting a run around here at times against a team that's just got nothing to play for, but didn't have the ability to put the ball in the back of the net. I'll probably go up a 3-1, and I will for one of the few times in my life go to the bookies and put it on just so that I can gloat with Stewie when he wins.
Yeah, Excellent. Fingers crossed. Before we go, as always, it's a chance to see whether there's any other odds with the tune. Gonna get some white gloves for next week, mate.
This is where I feel like I should say, please gamble responsibly.
Yeah, well, that's it. Perfect. Joe Walker's promised to come on at some point. He was running around making the band's tea tonight, but he says, well, it was nice while it lasted. But the informed Newcastle United are back to being the underdog in what must be the most pointless game in the history on Sunday. Although it will be nice to round another interesting season off for Newcastle United. Fulham 21-20, Newcastle 23-10. The draw 14-5, which actually gives decent value if you consider the nothingness of the game. Newcastle to repeat a final day 4-0 hammering at the Cottage is 80-1. However, 1-1 at 7-1 looks more realistic. He says, if you fancy goals, 8-13 for over 2.5 goals, and both teams to score 8-13. Josh Maja is favourite to score anytime for Fulham at 6-5. Carroll and Gale still outpriced Joe and Miggy, who the standard is 5-2. Joe Willock is 4-1 to finish off with 7 in 7 goals in 7 games. So that's 4-1 for that, worth a daft bet. Newcastle are even money to win either half and 5-1 to score a penalty. Joe's advice, keep your stakes low on this one. He'll be putting his bet on for the food bank, but he says, don't worry, Mr. Hasty. ASM will not feature after he let us down in the last matches to the tune of £130. He says, never chase your losses and gamble responsibly, Joe. And we'll get Joe to send us in the odds as we move through the Euros as well. It'd be good to get his thoughts on that. But big shout out to Joe, big shout out to Andre as well for everything they've done over the Newcastle United season. Been absolutely fantastic. And the clock has beaten us. Great night, lads. Great show. And Keith, I presume you'll be all right for next Friday, mate, for the season review?
I will do, yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. We're going to have to start thinking about renaming this show. I'll give it a bit of thought during the week. But as always, great to have your company, Steve, Mitch and Keith. And have a good weekend, lads. Don't let the football spoil it.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Cheers, everyone.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only